My name is Vera. I am 23 years old. I grew up in a home where God was not just a part of our lives. He was the center of everything. My father is a respected elder in our church, and my mother leads the women's ministry. They were the kind of parents people looked up to. People brought their children to our home and said, "See how Vera behaves. Learn from her." We weren't rich, but we had peace. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom flat. My father worked hard, managing small business contracts while my mother sold fabric on weekdays. We never lacked food or shelter, and there was love in our home. Discipline too, yes, but it came from a place of care, not cruelty. My parents were soft-spoken but firm. We had morning devotionals every day without fail. My father read the scriptures, and my mother led the prayers. I memorized Bible verses like they were lullabies. Being an only child made things even more intense. I was the answer to their 8 years of waiting and praying. They told me stories of how my mother wept in church, how they held hands and fasted together. So I wasn't just a daughter. I was their answered prayer, their living testimony. I carried that weight on my shoulders from a young age. I never wanted to disappoint them. I joined the church choir at 15. Singing made me feel close to God. Every note I sang felt like worship, not performance. People always said my voice could melt hearts, and sometimes when I sang, I saw grown men wipe tears from their eyes. I took pride in that. I wanted to honor my parents, to stay on the right path, to please God. And then, one day, Florence joined the choir. She was radiant in a way that drew attention without even trying. Her dresses were bold but tasteful. Her hair always laid perfectly, her nails clean and long. She had this energy about her, confident, fearless, even rebellious, but you wouldn't know it just by watching her sing. Her voice was gentle and airy, and her eyes always seemed to hide something unspoken. She noticed me during our second rehearsal together. "You have a strong voice," she said, "very powerful, like you've been singing since birth." I smiled and thanked her. We got closer quickly. She started walking me home after rehearsals, and I found myself enjoying her company. She made me laugh. She was older, maybe 22 or 23, but she treated me like a younger sister. She teased me about my old phone or the way I dressed. She'd say, "Vera, you sing like an angel, but dress like you're hiding from the world." We became inseparable in just a few weeks. But as our friendship grew, I began to notice things I didn't understand. Florence never talked about work, yet she always had money. She changed her hairstyle weekly. She wore designer shoes and carried a sleek smartphone I only saw in ads. When I asked her about it once, she smiled and said, "Don't worry about me. God provides in mysterious ways." One evening, after rehearsal, we were walking home when she suddenly paused at a junction and said, "Wait here for me." I stood, confused as she walked over to a black SUV parked on the side of the road. She leaned into the window, spoke briefly to the driver, then entered the car and waved at me before it drove off. She called me the next day like nothing had happened. When I asked her who the man was, she chuckled. "Just a friend. A friend that helps me pay my bills." Her answers were always vague, but I was too shy to push. Eventually, she told me the truth. We were sitting on a bench near the church compound after choir practice. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Vera, let me be honest with you. I do hookups." I didn't know what to say. My heart dropped. I had heard of girls who did such things, but never imagined someone in the choir could be involved, someone I respected. I looked away, but she gently nudged my shoulder. She said, "I'm not ashamed. I don't steal. I don't beg. I use what I have. This world isn't fair, Vera. Being good doesn't always pay. You'll understand one day. I tried to change the topic, but something about her words clung to me. I didn't tell her how disturbed I felt. I just listened. But inside, I was torn. If you are still watching to this stage, please do well to subscribe to our channel, drop your comment, like, and share to your friends and family. This might be what they need. And most importantly, hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever we drop a new episode of You Are Not Alone. From then on, Florence became more open about her lifestyle. She would casually mention clients and laugh about gifts they gave her. When I expressed my discomfort, she would say things like, "I know you're different, but one day you'll get tired of suffering for nothing." I told her I would never do what she was doing. She smiled and said, "We'll see." She didn't pressure me at first, but the comments kept coming. One evening, she placed her phone in my hand and showed me a payment alert. "Just one night," she said. "This man gave me this just for keeping him company. We didn't even do anything serious." I tried to hand the phone back. "I'm not interested, Florence." She laughed. "You're already interested. You just don't know it yet." I stopped walking with her for a while after that. My parents noticed the shift in my mood. I couldn't explain it. I felt like I was trapped between two lives, the peaceful world of my upbringing and the tempting world of control and luxury that Florence kept dangling in front of me. But Florence didn't give up. She started sending me clothes, lip gloss. She bought me a pair of heels and said, "Just wear them to practice. You don't owe me anything." When I refused, she said, "You're making me feel like a charity case." Eventually, I accepted a gift, then another. It felt harmless at first, but then one day, Florence looked at me and said, "You don't have to commit. Just come out with me once. Just see it for yourself. You're not selling your soul. You're just learning what the world is really like." I said no. She asked again the next week. I still said no. Then one evening, after I had an argument with my parents over money, I needed a new phone and they said they couldn't afford it. Florence sent me a message that read, "One night, Vera, just one. Let me show you what freedom looks like." That night, I went with her. We met at the same junction I had watched her disappear from many weeks before. I wore jeans and a black top. I felt exposed, nervous, but I told myself I was just observing. She introduced me to 4 other girls, older, confident, loud. We walked to a nearby street where cars slowed down like shoppers at a roadside market. Men rolled down their windows and asked, "What's your price?" like we were products. A man in his 40s picked me. He had a firm grip and an expensive cologne. When he smiled, I saw something cruel behind it, but I didn't say no. I followed him. It was my first time. I won't describe the details, not because I've forgotten, but because some things live inside you, forever, in silence. He paid me. When he left, I stood in the bathroom of the hotel room staring at my reflection. I didn't look broken. I looked like me. But something inside me had changed. When I returned to Florence, she hugged me like I had passed a test. She whispered, "Now you understand." I didn't respond. I couldn't. That night, I didn't sleep. But the money, it was real. It was powerful. I couldn't deny it. The next week, I went out again. And again. My parents noticed. They asked questions. My mother cried and prayed louder in morning devotionals. My father threatened to report me to the church. Eventually, they did. I sat before our pastor, pretending to be remorseful. I lied. I smiled. I said I was just spending time with friends. But in my heart, I had already crossed a line. And one day, I made a choice that changed everything. I packed my bag and moved in with Florence. I told myself it was temporary, just until I could find myself. But I didn't know then that I was walking into a storm I might never come out from. The first night at Florence's apartment, everything felt new and strange. Florence introduced me to the other girls, 6 of us in total, each with a name I struggled to remember. They laughed loudly, wore revealing clothes, and smoked cigarettes while watching loud music videos on a cracked TV. I sat on the edge of the mattress, hugging my bag tightly, wondering what I had gotten myself into. Florence brought me a plate of noodles that evening and sat beside me. "You'll get used to it," she said with a smile. "We all did. It's not easy at first, but you'll enjoy the freedom." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. I didn't eat much. I missed my mother's cooking, the evening prayers, the silence of our home after devotional. But I had made my choice, and I was too proud to admit I already regretted it. The days passed slowly, but the nights moved quickly. That first week, Florence didn't pressure me. She let me watch. I would sit quietly in the corner while she and the other girls dressed up, put on makeup, and took turns at the mirror. By 9 p.m., they were ready, and one by one they stepped into the darkness to wait by the roadside junction, where cars would slow down, windows would roll down, and men would speak in low tones. I watched all of it like someone watching their own life from a distance. By the end of the week, Florence turned to me and said, "You're ready." I wasn't, but I followed her anyway. That night, I wore a borrowed dress that clung too tightly to my body. My face was painted to look older, bolder, and less innocent. My heart pounded with every step I took toward the junction. I didn't talk much. I only listened. The girls whispered prices and signals, laughing like it was just another job. When a black SUV slowed beside me and the man inside asked if I was available, I froze. Florence nudged me forward and whispered the price in my ear. I went with him. I don't remember much from that night, except the feeling of my soul leaving my body. I returned with shaky legs and a stained conscience, clutching the envelope of money he gave me like it was a reward for betraying myself. I cried in the bathroom that night while the shower ran. But the next morning, I counted the money again. It was enough to buy new clothes, food, and even a smartphone. That's how it started. Each night became easier than the one before. I stopped crying. I stopped feeling. I told myself it was survival, that I was just being strong. I bought a new phone, joined a messaging group where girls like me shared locations and contacts of clients. I even made a short online profile under a fake name. Florence was proud. "See, you're becoming one of us," she said, hugging me one evening. "See, you're not the little choir girl anymore." But inside, I missed her. The girl I used to be. I stopped going to church completely. I blocked my mother's number. I avoided any message from my father. I knew they were praying for me. I imagined them kneeling in the living room, crying out to God, but I couldn't face them. Not with the shame I carried in my heart. Sometimes I would stare at my reflection late at night, asking myself who I had become. I tried to remember the sound of the choir, the peace I used to feel while singing. Now all I heard was the horn of cars and the voices of strange men in hotel rooms. One night, I stayed back while the others went out. I got a message from an unknown number. A client had seen my profile and wanted to book me for the night. He offered double the usual rate. I hesitated, but the money pulled me in. I agreed. He sent the hotel name and room number. I told Florence I'd be out on a private booking. She smiled and said, "That's how the big girls do it. Go make money."
I arrived at the hotel before 10 p.m. The receptionist didn't even ask questions, just pointed me upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly, trying to calm the unease in my chest. When I reached the room, I knocked gently. The door opened slightly, and I stepped in. There were 3 men inside. I stopped at the door, confused. "Who booked me?" I asked. No one answered. One of them closed the door behind me. I backed away, but it was too late. Their faces were blank, their eyes full of wickedness. They didn't care about my fear. They pushed me to the bed, tore my dress, and took turns. I screamed until my voice broke. They left me bleeding, trembling and broken on the cold hotel floor. I don't know how I got to the hospital. Someone must have found me and called for help. I remember waking up to the blinding light of a hospital room, my body sore and bandaged, and a nurse asking me questions I couldn't answer. I closed my eyes and wished I could disappear. When the doctors ran tests and returned with their results, I was too numb to react. "You're pregnant," one of them said, almost gently. I stared at the ceiling, and "You're HIV positive." The world fell silent. The tears didn't come immediately. They came hours later, in violent sobs that shook my whole body. I was only 18. I had ruined everything. My life, my future, my health, and now, my child. I kept asking myself how I got here. Was it the first time I lied to my parents? Or the first night I went to the junction? Was it Florence? Was it me? The next day, my parents came to the hospital. I didn't know how they found me, but when I saw my mother's face, pale and wet with tears, and my father's trembling hands gripping the hospital railing, I broke down completely. "I'm sorry," I cried. "I'm so sorry." They didn't shout. They didn't ask why. They just held me. My mother stroked my hair while I sobbed on her lap like a child. My father turned his face away, wiping his eyes. "We still love you," my mother whispered. I stayed in a hospital for 2 weeks. The physical wounds healed faster than the emotional ones. The doctor started me on medication to manage the HIV and protect my unborn baby. They told me it was possible for the child to be born without the virus if I stayed faithful to my treatment. That became my hope. When I was discharged, I returned home. My parents cleaned out the guest room for me. The church elders visited. They didn't come with judgment. They came with prayers. They anointed me with oil, laid hands on my belly, and asked God to show me mercy. I cried through it all. Not from guilt this time, but from gratitude. I didn't deserve their love, but they gave it freely. Months passed, my belly grew. So did the shame. I stopped going out. The whispers from neighbors, the curious looks from old church members. It was hard. But I held on to the new schedule the doctors gave me. Pills every morning, vitamins every evening, blood tests every few weeks. I began to join online support groups. I read stories of people living full lives with HIV. Some of them were mothers. Some of them were even grandmothers. When I gave birth, the baby was quiet at first. The doctor hit his tiny back and he let out a loud cry. A beautiful, angry cry.
a cry that reminded me I was still alive. They placed him in my arms, and I stared at his tiny face, his wrinkled fingers, his innocent eyes. I named him Emmanuel. Tests later confirmed that he was HIV positive. After a few more days in the hospital, the nurses and doctors decided I was strong enough to be discharged. My mother was the one who came to take me home. She had barely left my side throughout the whole ordeal. She was quieter now, her eyes lined with exhaustion and unspoken grief. But whenever she looked at Emmanuel, a softness crept into her features. She carried him gently, carefully, as if he was the most precious thing in the world. And maybe he was. Home wasn't the same anymore. I wasn't the same. The walls felt tighter, the silence heavier. I returned not as a daughter, but as a mother. A girl who had tasted shame, betrayal, and consequences. The living room still had my childhood drawings on the walls, but my innocence had long been erased. My father rarely spoke to me. He would nod occasionally, or ask how Emmanuel was doing, but the warmth he once carried for me was gone. I had broken something inside him, something that couldn't be easily repaired. I understood. And yet, it broke me. But every morning, I would wake to Emmanuel's cries. I would feed him, rock him back to sleep, and in those moments, I found a new purpose. I wasn't just living for myself anymore. I had someone who depended on me, someone who didn't care about my past, someone who saw me as his world. My antiretroviral treatment began 2 weeks after delivery. The doctors explained that I would need to take the medication every single day on time for the rest of my life. If I skipped doses, the virus could become resistant, and the consequences could be fatal. It scared me, the idea of being tied to a pill bottle forever, but fear had taught me discipline. Every morning after breastfeeding Emmanuel, I would sit quietly and swallow the tablets with a glass of lukewarm water. I would stare at the label on the bottle, reading it again and again. It made it feel real, made me remember what had happened, what I had become. One Sunday, during service, the pastor called for those who wanted prayer for healing and restoration. My mother nudged me gently. I looked at her and shook my head. I wasn't ready. Not because I didn't want healing, but because I didn't believe I deserved it. Instead, I found comfort in support groups. One day, my doctor told me about a community center where people living with HIV gathered weekly. I was hesitant at first, but eventually I agreed to go. I wrapped Emmanuel on my back, wore a loose gown, and followed the directions she gave me. There, I met others like me, men and women, some young, some older, all carrying their own stories. Some had been born with the virus. Others, like me, had been infected through choices they regretted deeply. We shared, we cried, we encouraged. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. There was a woman named Sister Grace who led the group. She had been living with HIV for over 2 decades and was now a counselor. Her voice was calm, soothing, and her eyes carried a kindness that made people feel seen. She took a special interest in me. "You're strong, Vera," she told me after our 3rd session. "Don't ever forget that. What you've been through didn't destroy you. You're still here. And you're a mother now. That's your second chance." Those words stayed with me. As the weeks went by, I began to write in a journal. At first, it was simple entries. How I felt that day, how Emmanuel had smiled in his sleep, what I heard during group meetings. But soon, it became a safe space where I poured out everything. My fears, my regrets, my hopes. I wrote about Florence, too. She hadn't reached out since I was attacked.
I heard from one of the girls in our apartment that she had fled to another state after the incident. They said the police had come looking for her, that she was scared. I sometimes wondered what I would say if I saw her again. Would I hate her, blame her, forgive her? Maybe all of the above. One afternoon, while walking Emmanuel to a nearby clinic for his monthly checkup, I met an older woman selling fruits by the roadside. She smiled at me, then at Emmanuel. "You're doing well. I see you pass here often. Keep going. Don't stop." I didn't know her, but her words warmed something inside me. Life wasn't perfect. Some days were still hard. There were nights when Emmanuel cried for hours and I couldn't soothe him. Days when I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Mornings when I wanted to stay in bed and forget everything. But there were also beautiful moments, like the first time Emmanuel laughed out loud, or when he called me mama with a squeaky voice, or when he stood up wobbling on his feet and took his first step towards me. Each moment reminded me that broken things could still hold beauty, that even after the darkest night, morning would come. I had changed. My dreams had shifted, but I hadn't given up. I started volunteering at the community center. At first, I helped clean chairs, organize materials, and babysit for other mothers during sessions. But soon, I was asked to speak, to share my story with others who were new, who were scared, who thought their lives were over. The first time I spoke, I trembled. My hands were cold, my voice cracked, but I told the truth. My name is Vera. I am 18 years old, and I live with HIV, but I also live with hope. There was silence in the room. Then a few people nodded. Some cried. After the meeting, a teenage girl came to hug me. She didn't say a word, just held me tightly. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. The more I gave, the more I healed. I began taking online classes, free ones I found on my phone through community programs. I learned about digital marketing, customer service, and even how to create basic graphics. Slowly, I started applying for freelance jobs. I got rejected many times, but one day, someone said yes. I did a small job designing flyers for an online store. They paid me. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My first, honest money in a long, long time. I kept going. More jobs came in. My mother helped care for Emmanuel while I worked. We became a team again, slowly, carefully. The pain hadn't vanished, but it no longer controlled me. Every time I looked at Emmanuel, I saw the reason to fight, to hope, to dream again. Because even though I made mistakes, I was still here.
Note: if you notice any symptoms that you did not understand in your body, do well to contact a doctor immediately. HIV is not a death sentence. You can still live. And to anyone living with HIV, your diagnosis does not define your worth, your dreams, or your future. You are still whole, still capable of love, laughter, and purpose. With the right medication, care, and support, you can live a long, healthy, and fulfilling life. Don't let shame or fear silence your voice. Speak your truth, seek help when you need it, and surround yourself with people who remind you that healing is possible, not just for your body, but for your heart and spirit too. I'm not in any way trying to tell you to do what I do. No. As a child, resist any relationship that will lead you astray. Be humble, patient, and obedient. Listen to your parents. As for me, here I am, healing and hoping for the best in life. I haven't given up yet. I'm still pushing. I know a day is coming when I will find someone who loves me and my child.
My name is Vera. I live a wayward life at young age. I and my child also live with HIV. I regret everything, but I choose to live. We choose to live. And I know I'm not alone. To anyone watching this that is going through the same thing, know that you are not alone.